Welcome back. The Supreme Court has released Ali Khan Mahmoodabad, Associate Professor and Head of the Political Science Department at Ashoka University in Haryana, against his arrest over a social media post on Operation Sindoor. Further, it refused to stay the investigation against him. The top court also ordered that he shall not write any article or make any online speech related to both posts, which are subject to investigation. The top court has further directed Haryana DGP to constitute a 3-member special investigation team within the 24 hours and asked the associate professor to join the investigation in full cooperation. Meanwhile, the court has ordered that he shall surrender his passport. We'll talk about this and some of the delicate aspects that will come out of this particular case. Gautam Mukherjee, senior journalist, is joining us on the show. Mr. Alok Mehta, editorial director of India News, also with us on the program. Mr. K.V. Dhananjay, lawyer of the Supreme Court, also joins us on the program. Mr. Mehta, I'll begin with you, sir. So how do you look at this case? This is obviously a comment which was made against a very important operation. Of course, Operation Sindoor, for decades and perhaps even centuries to come, sir, will be affiliated, will be associated with the patriotism. It will be found in our history books in a few decades from now. How do you look at this case and its sensitivity, and how the courts have also treated it?
Well, certainly it's a case is under Supreme Court supervision. So we will not comment on the Supreme Court because everybody can have bail and can get the bail because it's a right of every person. But earlier Chief Justice also mentioned about it. But I think there will be a case, certainly. They have asked to inquiry in details. But about the theory of these kind of doubts, I will just mention the other background also. But before that, in this statement, what he mentioned, the optics of two women, soldiers presenting their findings and important. But optics must transfer to reality on the ground. Otherwise, it is just hypocrisy. You see, this is the real serious comment what I feel. When you are talking Sindoor operation, when talking the national security, when I talk with the army and the women army officers, very senior officers, commander, and they represent India. And that time when they are briefing, you include and involve them on the lynching and these kind of domestic politics. Last few months, we have not heard anything about the lynching. But the person who is a professor, certainly I have respect for anybody who is a professor at Ashoka University or any other university. So academically, I am not commenting about his personal record or something. Maybe earlier also in the social media we found that who was his father and who was his grandfather, who was in Pakistan. So I'm not going to personal because one can in India, Pakistan, it was united. And at the time maybe some family member here or there. But you see, these kind of statements created doubt. And if you're a professor or journalist, I think if you remember, I always mention you that even as a journalist, media person, we also go to a number of places and meet people. But our accreditation should be very clear. So in the name of just the name of the media or name of the professor or name of the doctor, especially nowadays we are also having an Naxali operation, which is like the same thing, which is terrorism. So these people who work as a professor, they indirectly, not him, I'm not over him, but the principle when the inquiry should be there for everybody, including us. If there's some doubt about our activities, we are a movement, we do something wrong. Expression is our right as a constitution. But expression doesn't mean that you can expose anything, you discuss anti-racial, you talk anything immorally. And I think number of provisions are there, depend on the court also. But otherwise the inquiry must be there. Because I know the few people in the background who were helping Naxali or the terrorists, and they were in the name of the journalists, they were moving around with ISI or the Chinese journalists last year, sometime arrested. Everybody knows the case, Chinese scandal. So, one Jyoti Malhotra case or the professor's case, I think the inquiry should be there. And there should be objection also about his statement. Why he can just say, okay, there is something what the Omar Abdullah or Owaisi, they are not talking like in this stuff, but they are also senior leaders. One professor, he is not supposed to talk in politics in such a way Is right? What you do? You are misusing your right, and you are defaming others, and you are just optics means आप कठपुतली हैं. You are utilizing as a mukhota in Hindi. What we call it? Oh, you just want to show something, but your real face in India. So you give a message to Pakistan and other anti-India forces. When you go to United Nations, the people are going, the delegations are going, and then they will say, okay, Ashok, university is very famous and very prestigious university. Your professor himself said that in India, people are suffering. That's why people are becoming a terrorist or supporting the Pakistan forces, or even they got attacked because of the Pahalgam. I've seen some statement like this also. The Pahalgam attack because of the Muslims were suffering. These kind of statements we can't say it's naturally it is a treachery. It's a very much against the India. I'm not talking about it, and that's why they should inquiry what is the background, what type of writing he was doing, and then whom he is helping. Somebody hide in his house, also it's possible. His or anybody's house. I know the journalist was in Rajasthan, very senior journalist, now he's no more. But the one Naxalite, very lady, was in very serious charges, and she was hiding in, and somebody informed him that she left from the house. So these kind of cases I know, that's why I'm mentioning media also. I know the professor, they were working in a Delhi University, wife of a very senior journalist, and then charge was there that how she was helping some forces in the Atal Bihari Vajpayee time. Ultimately, because of the journalist wife, somebody just got released. Otherwise, it was also a very serious case. One can go to the record. I'm not naming the people, but I say the professor of somebody's family also, they should be very responsible. If they are from a family member or they themselves a professor or academic or doctors, any professional or a businessman, they should be more protective for our Indian interests, not the interests of in the name of the welfare, in the name of the human rights. And human rights, the racket I know, this kind of, and how much funding they were getting. The case of NewsX is still there. This is also in the court. But you have also discussed so many times. So that's what I'm saying. In the way of just saying that you are a professor, that's why the court is very liberal in that sense. Okay, we have got enough evidence. But I think the action should be there, very serious action, because if you are involving army, security forces of India, it's not in the United States or in the United Kingdom when you can talk. Can you speak something against the judges here? But you can publish photographs or even the cartoon against the judges in Britain. So when we talk about our right of the expression, why don't you follow the American and Britain? British, they have allowed. You can publish any type of cartoon and against the judges. Here you can't do this. So there's a limitation for judiciary. There's a limitation about the media. There's a limitation for anybody. Constitution is above and nation is above all.
Gautam, what do you make of this letter that was written by this professor? It of course talked about the futility of Operation Sindoor and also spoke about the government trying to hide the state and the fate of minorities in India. It is of course extremely offensive in a number of ways.
Well, Vineet, for this to be said in the kind of juxtapositions that this assistant professor has made from an increasingly leftist and toxic university like Ashoka, which has been involved in other controversies as well, involving one senior journalist in particular, you will remember, is typical of two things. One is, it is Islamic sniping with a view to assist Pakistan. Secondly, it is typical communist baiting of the state. The communists have also disagreed as a party with Operation Sindoor. So, and this is not the first thing, the communists disagree with everything to do with the state of India, except the gravy train, which they are very happy to imbibe. So this man, he is foreign educated, he's not a boor, or a hayseed. He has done this very carefully and deliberately at a time when he wants to create controversy and cast aspersions both against the government and the armed forces. I'm very glad that the Supreme Court has placed restrictions on him. Yes, he has been given bail. It's a conditional bail. He's not allowed to leave the country. He's not allowed to talk anymore in this incendiary manner, and it's very appropriate. At the same time, we've got bigger fish than him. We've got the president of the Congress Party, we've got the leader of the opposition, who are raising issues with regard to Operation Sindoor. I find that India is, I've said this before in the context of the point five that is often referred to within India, who are against and working against India, being dealt with very, very, if you like, softly. It isn't just a matter of all the illegal immigrants from countries that are at any time could turn against us, like Bangladesh, and of course our perennial enemy Pakistan. There are Chinese people here who have done a number of things and are still here. As a nationality, they're present here. What all they're up to in a underground capacity is hard to tell until it surfaces. They're certainly into economic skullduggery. The Chinese have been caught more than once. Now, I think a crackdown is beginning to happen at last, and it is high time. This Mahmoodia would not be in jail at all unless there was some kind of crackdown and a lower court decided to sentence him. Similarly, there are others, prominent politicians, who get away with this all the time. They're getting away right at this moment. The question that I have for the government is, why do you allow it? Why do you allow it? Why do you encourage such people? What is the gain in it? This is not diversity, as somebody else said. This is not the meaning of democracy. This is plain sedition, walking around and doing whatever it pleases. Vineet.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Gautam. Mr. Dhananjay, how do you look at this particular case? Of course, the courts have also observed that this guy is educated, but this was a stunt which was pulled off to get attention, and it's obviously not in line, not in tune with that, that astute sentiment that the nation had when Operation Sindoor was going on. Sensitivities are heightened at that point in time. So anything that you say, will be hyperbolic in nature.
Well, I think it's slightly complex, far more complex than that. Operation Sindoor is over now. And you see, dissent is a fundamental bedrock of our democracy. Now, why do we have United Nations? United Nations was made possible by all the people who didn't want war, the dissenters. So I think freedom of speech essentially means this very kind of speech. It's not a question of whether one would agree with him or disagree with him. People must have the freedom of speech, and if the antidote to allegedly bad speech is more speech. Now, you have this professor talking about Muslims not being cared enough. Perhaps if the BJP government in Haryana wanted to counter it, they perhaps would have started talking about various schemes that the government has for Muslims specifically. In fact, it's a fact that a lot of BJP governments have wonderful schemes for Muslims, which practically nobody knows about. So they start talking about it, and then there is a Muslim poor parent who looks at it, and then he says, "Oh my God, I was not aware of this," and then he starts applying for that scheme, educates his or her child, and then goes about telling that the education was made possible by this scheme. So there's a reason why we have chosen freedom of speech, and that is because when there is uncomfortable or whatever kind of freedom of speech that somebody exercises, if you don't like it, then please counter it. And instead, what just happened now is that you have sedition coming back. By the way, sedition at this point of time Section 124 of the Indian Penal Code was halted by the Honorable Supreme Court, but now you have Section 152 of the BNS saying exactly the, or far worse things. There's life imprisonment, and that must be the reason why this particular FIR was reported around the world. Now, what happens is our stature comes down, and investment is also likely to come down because investment would require a very democratic climate. People must be free to express their views. And there are people who don't want war. And I don't think anybody in this country, the ones who govern, could say that all of the country should come together to support it. It's occupational hazard when somebody chooses to enter into politics, when somebody chooses to become the prime minister, or when somebody chooses to get into the army. Whatever they do, believing that is the best for the country, might not be something that everybody agrees in. That's the occupational hazard. And I'm slightly disappointed with the fact that the Supreme Court did not stay the investigation because two things. This, I don't think anybody was alleging that this man, this particular professor was in the take, that there was anybody sponsoring him to say these things. Unless and until there was an allegation of that nature, it simply would have been futile to continue this investigation. What is this investigation going to uncover at any rate? That professor certainly will have 100 different ways to say that he was justified in saying what he said. He could perhaps say that, look, take the case of UP, the largest state in the country. How many Muslim ministers do we have? In fact, forget ministers. How many Muslim candidates were even given tickets by the BJP to contest? They could take one instance like that and then harp about it for 10 years. That's called freedom of speech. And that is the occupational hazard that we all signed up for when we wanted India to be a democracy. And war. There are people against war. Now, Operation Sindoor, well, let's take the government's word at face that according to the government, Operation Sindoor is going to give us lasting security, or for that matter, it has sent a powerful deterrent enough. Now, there could be some other professor who would say that, wait, I don't think much is happening under the present dispensation, which is any different from the previous dispensation. Somebody could give you data and say, look at what happened from 2014 to 18. Those were the 5 years before Article 370 was abrogated in 2019. And we also had the attack, the Pahalgam, I think that was a Pahalgam. I'm sorry if I'm not getting the attack on our soldiers that happened in 2019. So between 2014 and 2018, 1,450 killings happened in Kashmir. From 2019 to date, we have something like 1,350 killings. So there are people who could give you this data and say that perhaps we still are struggling with the issue in Kashmir. And there are people who would certainly look at the kind of indebtedness India has gone into. Look, in the last 10 years. Now, this has nothing to do with the current administration. I'm very confident that had it been UPA or some ABC or anyone else, they would have done exactly the same. We've spent $500 billion on our security. And as a result of, and by the way, when we were spending this much of money between 2017 and 2021, we were the biggest defense spenders in the world. Now, look where it has taken us. This year, I'm talking of 2024-25, the budgeted figures show that we paid almost 12 lakh crore rupees as interest. That is 38% of our revenue, which is just 31 lakh crore rupees. And which other country in the world pays so much as a proportion of the revenue? There are only 4 countries, according to the World Bank data. All 4 countries are incidentally bankrupt. So, this is a time to worry about. This is a time to talk about war. Are we better off with these wars? And by the way, the South India, I'm in Bangalore, talking to you from. The 5 states are said to be the economic engine of India. You know how much revenue they earned just last year? Or for that matter, 2024-25, it was 10,40,000 crore rupees. That's much less than the central government pays as interest towards the debt that we have taken. So there are people who should be, dissent is a defining feature of our democracy. And I don't think anybody in the army should take offense to what this tweet was. The best thing would have been to ignore it if it was like in any manner injurious. And at the same time, I'm also talking about another thing, which is, look, we can't have misinformation. Now, if somebody deliberately puts out a tweet that says 1,000 civilians in Kashmir was killed during this Operation Sindoor, you obviously will have to attack them under the law. You will have to charge them. You will have to make an example out of them because you got to arrest them. And you got to send a message to people who put out such deliberate misinformation that it will not be tolerated, because that misinformation is very dangerous. If somebody were to put out misinformation of that nature, what will happen is the civilians in Kashmir will take back will go back to the stones, and they will hit up the security forces in self-preservation or self-defense. The security forces will again fire, and we will have a volatile situation there. Now, that's misinformation that will have to be dealt with. But this professor's tweet, I honestly don't believe it was anywhere close to that. It's entirely possible that the government, might have inside information that would suggest the professor was on the take. If that's the case, please shame him. He's not some royalty. Please put out that information. Please charge him with that. Please accuse him of that and say that and tell that to the court. So, short of that, I honestly don't believe what the Supreme Court did today was right, because it's important for people to be able to dissent. It's important for people to be able to say that, look, the war, any operation is always political, because I tell you, you go over to any political science library, you will find credible books, credible scholarly research that will show that a good number of wars in the past, a good number of conflicts in the past, not necessarily of India, or for that matter, not really of India, have something to do with politics far more than they did have to do with securing the borders, because people wage wars to prop up their political status. This is something every political professor, science professor will teach to his children. So what's really the harm if somebody were to say that, oh, this particular operation also had something to do with politics? I think we don't need to welcome views like that. We also don't need to punish views like that. You just let them float in the information space. And it's important. I would have thought the BJP government in Haryana could have engaged with this individual with more tweets. Officially, they could have, I was really hoping that they would do it, because I know for a fact that the BJP government in Haryana, and in fact, it's true, the BJP government in a good number of states have wonderful programs for the minorities, specifically Muslims, scholarships and all of that. And it's also true that it's simply not, people are not really aware of it, and almost every year the report comes out that the funds were not utilized due to lack of demand. Is it that Muslims are not poor enough? No, it's just that they didn't know. Perhaps this was an occasion the BJP government in Haryana could have taken to talk about it, and probably even embarrass this particular professor, because it's entirely possible he was not aware of that data.
All right. Okay. Well, let's take quick concluding thoughts from all our panelists, starting with Mr. Mehta, then we go to Gautam, and then we're going to wrap up. Mr. Mehta.
I think we have respect to Mr. Dhananjay Kumar ji, but I feel that even Nyaya Samhita is better, because India is a very big country, not like other countries. We can't compare with any other small countries like Europe or anybody else. That's why the challenges, our borders are so big. And the same kind of community, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Isai and all, caste and creed, number of issues are there. And that's why we need these kind of, because maybe he's very right. Maybe the Intelligence Bureau and the other agencies, they must be having record. But maybe what I was writing, maybe nobody bothered. But sometime, very crucial time, if I do something wrong, then any government, they do defamation, contempt, everything. So government or non-government, even the opposition parties also, they charge each other. So what freedom of expression, again, I will tell you, what I feel as a media person, as working since last 55 years in journalism, I still believe that we should have code of ethics on national issues. We are different than the other countries, and that's why this professor, there should be very, very thorough inquiry about him, and not others also. What our other colleague also mentioned about it, because any universities, not maybe in some other universities also like this, in Hyderabad or in Banaras or even Hindu fanatic or any Christian fanatic, the church also. Sometimes we used to write about the Northeast, what was happening at the time. So it doesn't mean that, but on the this operation, Sindoor operation, what he was doing, it shows the sample of what his mind, anti-India, pro-Pakistan, and supporting the Pakistan mind, that India, Muslims are not safe. Just give the incidents. How many people killed in United States? Every third day they have the firing and everything. It doesn't mean the number of attacks in France or in Britain. So it doesn't mean that what kind of crime is there, or you can't compare with others. All the time people just believe that, okay, talk about the other countries on the name of the freedom. This is not the freedom struggle. That's why I think that new law should be there. Still I believe.
Right, sir. Gautam, quickly, 10 seconds. We have a paucity of time.
Well, in my opinion, Vineet, we are much too liberal in terms of allowing dissent like this, particularly in times of war. In Pakistan, you've got a field marshal who is proclaiming jihad officially. The entire country, he's a mullah, he's proclaiming jihad against this state. Anybody speaks against it will be shot. Now, in our country, we should at a minimum remove security from all politicians who talk against the security establishment. And we should certainly jail people like this Mahmoodia anytime and every time. This is not freedom of expression. This is sedition, plain and simple, Vineet.
Fair enough. Thank you, gentlemen, for being a part of this conversation and sharing your perspective with us.